Hello, I'm Terry Slavin. I'm editor of Ethical Corporation magazine, and I'm delighted today to be joined by María Mendiluce, CEO of We Mean Business Coalition, and Sandrine Dixson-Decleve, who's president of the Club of Rome. As I know from covering climate for many years now, they are both formidable women who are very prominent in the climate space. And in fact, both have been in Reuters Events' annual Trailblazing Women in Climate list. Sandrine last year, which was the first year of our list, and Maria this year. This morning, they've taken time out of their very hectic schedules at New York, Climate Week New York, to talk to me about a new initiative they've just launched, the Women Leading on Climate Network. Ladies, welcome, and thank you so much for coming in. Maybe we can kick off just explaining what you do. What's the We Mean Business Coalition? What's the Club of Rome?
Well, thank you. So Women Business Coalition was created 10 years ago. And the idea at the time is that we needed to mobilize the progressive business to take a stand on climate, to advocate for progressive policies so that companies can decarbonize faster. Fast forward to today, there are already 17,000 companies that have followed the different initiatives through our network, setting science-based targets, joining to the SME Climate Hub, and actually being active on decarbonizing their emissions and advocating for the change that is needed in terms of policies and in terms of different instruments to achieve those objectives.
And the Club of Rome.
So it's interesting because actually when We Mean Business was started, I was one of the first founders. So this is also the nice link between Maria and myself, as we were part of the foundation through the Prince of Wales Corporate Leaders Group at the time. But now the Club of Rome, as president, is looking very much at how, from an economic and scientific perspective, we can really unpack what we call complex systems challenges. And we bring together thought leaders from across the globe to work with business leaders to really unlock the deep, almost blind spots that we have today in order to meet not only our climate challenges, but our inequality, poverty challenges, et cetera.
So this Women Leaders Network that you've launched, how is that going to help? What was the need of it? Where did it come from?
Well, I think there's it came from two sides. On one hand, Catherine McKenna, the former Minister of Environment of Canada, launched this network back in Glasgow. But this year, when the COP presidency, the Azerbaijan, presented their teams, there were no women on the team. There were 30 men, no women. So we said, basta. So that's it. We said, this is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. You know, we know that women are a force of nature, but also they are more likely, 2.5 times more likely to ask governments to take climate action. You know who was the first woman that put climate on the political agenda? Margaret Thatcher, back in 1980. 1995, the first COP president was Angela Merkel. Yeah. And there were two women, Christiana Figueres and Laurence Toubiana, who were key to the Paris Agreement. So we want more women to be in those positions. We want more women to lead, because we know that when women lead, action happens.
And you were actually someone who organized a big protest letter, didn't you?
Yes, together with Sandrine and many other women leaders, we say basta, and we wrote a letter to the presidency, and then they changed and they brought more women. Because let's face it, maybe it was a mistake that they did. I don't think they meant bad, but they just didn't think about it. That shouldn't be the case today. When you look at the sustainability space, it's full of amazing women that are doing great work with other colleagues. And honestly, it's when a lot of collaboration is happening. So we said, let's write this letter. 24 hours later, we had 80 amazing women signing this letter because they are ready to speak up like the numbers show, and they show them by doing it.
So in COP28 last year, there was a lot of very prominent women who were actually, some of them are in this network as well, and putting nature on the agenda for the first time, wasn't it? Looking at the agenda for this year, how do you feel about that? Do you think that possibly the lack of female representation may have reflected in the agenda that's on the table this year?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that first, well, there are two constraints. One is that somehow there's an assumption that because the agenda is going to be dominated to focus on finance, that we shouldn't be bringing women in, which is fundamentally flawed when you look at who's heading the IMF, who's heading now the European Central Bank. We've got prominent women that are actually working in finance. And so that constraint, I think, already in not bringing in the voice of some of the largest institutions that actually have women at the helm is problematic for me. But I think the other key issue is the fact that women, when they talk about finance or even when they talk about economics, they look at a much more systemic approach because they understand the broader impacts of what are happening. We have to remember that in many global South countries, it is the women that hold the power with regard to the financial resources, whether it be at home or whether it be in communities. So it's very important that we, and this is actually one of our key turnarounds in what we call Earth for All, this new model where we actually model both social and environmental tipping points, empowerment of women in decision making, and we've been able to plot it, will fundamentally shift the way in which we can actually achieve our climate goals. And the fact that that thinking has not been integrated into Baku is truly problematic if we want to actually sign something off, which we do in Berlin 1 year later for COP30.
So this week at the UN General Assembly, there's been the Pact for the Future that was signed. I know you were disappointed about the lack of ambition. Do you think that had there been more women in leadership roles in some of the countries that signed this pact, negotiated the pact, that it might have been a more ambitious pact?
I mean, I don't know, Maria, what you think, but I believe that both the lack of women right now leadership, female leadership, and also a real pushback in terms of ambition on many levels, and this is what we've seen actually in the final Pact for the Future, is problematic. We have a Secretary General who has said we're in the midst of a planetary emergency, who set the tone by saying, I want this pact and declaration of the future to really set some clear goals. And then we have seen that Saudi Arabia and Russia in particular have come in and blocked so many of the decisions. I've even heard that there are some countries that are going to write a letter saying that they oppose the pact, even though it's not ambitious at all. So we now are faced with a message to people across the globe which basically says we're not putting in place the leadership that's necessary and the regulatory frameworks at the international or even at the national level that are going to ensure that we're resilient to future crises and are actually going to create that alternative future that we need. If women had been at the helm, if more women had been part of those discussions at the national level, I think we would have had a totally different outcome.
But now let's turn to what is at stake. Now the countries need to do their next round of NDCs. And we're also seeing a lack of ambition. That's why we're launching this network, because women want to say we need to go forward and decisively. We need to ratchet the NDCs towards the 1.5, because we're still not meeting that. We need to have clear milestones and plans, and we need to have policy coherence in those national plans. I think it is important. I think the world has spoken. 80% of the world population wants governments to do more on climate. So I just ask countries to take the lead and to bring forward NDCs that are much more ambitious and that respond to the societal needs. Because it's interesting, you know, that we have Saudi and Russia blocking this for a reason. Last year we agreed to transition away from fossil fuels. Well, let's start to put milestones on how we're going to triple renewables, double energy efficiency, include a lot of batteries, increase the amount of kilometers of grid, and start to put an end date to some of the uses of fossil fuels. We have a great opportunity now with the NDCs, and women are asking governments to do so.
On a corporate level, we do our Trailblazing Women in Climate list. All of the different Reuters events, all covering all kinds of different sectors of the economy, they do a list as well. They have a real struggle actually finding women leaders in the auto sector. You know, it's no problem for me to find trailblazing women who were acting in the climate space. But kind of at the corporate level, you get a lot of women, chief sustainability officers are working in sustainability, not so much chief financial officers or CEOs. What's preventing women from getting to that kind of level?
So it's interesting, if you look at all of the analysis around gender equity and also ensuring that women have the possibility to move up the career ladder, what we see traditionally is, first of all, when anyone, a man or a woman, is just starting to get into mid-management and even higher management positions, it's smack in the middle of when a woman would like to actually start to think about starting a family. And in particular, in countries where there is not good health care, there is not good child care, there is not good services to enable actually a woman to do so, then we see that actually either women are choosing now no longer to have kids and then only do the career ladder, but in many cases we've seen that the reason why we're not getting as many women to top management positions is because they get halted around their 30s, their 40s, and now all the way to their 50s. So this is truly problematic. I also fundamentally believe that we do not have parity and we do not have equal action and equal opportunity, which has been fully integrated vertically across companies. We still have a predisposition to give more, actually, of the management positions to men, even though we see more and more women having engineering degrees, moving into the financial realm. So there is a real disconnect between what we're seeing in terms of the capacity of women, also the statistics that are everywhere saying that diversity in decision-making gives better decisions, and yet what actually happens on the ground in terms of hiring, and we're seeing here in the US that actually equal opportunity is moving backwards rather than forwards.
And how do you, what do we do? How do we address that?
I think you do need quotas. You absolutely need quotas, but I think you need to go beyond quotas. I think we need to come to the realization that the complexity of the challenges that we have before us are so strong that we need all hands on deck. That means different types of thinking, broader thinking coming from a female perspective, but also cultural diversity. And again, we just constantly have to bring out the statistics, unfortunately, the numbers, which say that more diverse teams at the top are fundamentally stronger in building resilience within the company, but also in potential growth.
I think when we manage teams as well, it is a bit about being very intentional on how you see the talent, the women talent that you have in the team, understand, where are they on their life phases, and accommodate the jobs to their situation so that they're ready to step up. Myself, I have 3 kids. When they were little kids, I didn't travel that much, and I knew, that I had to do all the things in that period, but we didn't stop. So I want my colleagues, to feel that they can have children and they can have a career, and we will put them on a pathway so that they can give their best in whatever circumstances they are, both women but also minority groups, etc. So we need to be very intentional. If we want to bring diversity, it's not only a slogan, it's just about putting in place active measures to create the conditions for those people to thrive.
Maybe I can just add that we're a slightly different generation, and it's really interesting to see the difference now, not only Maria's generation, but now even younger 30-somethings, where they're calling for this. They're acting on it. Whereas my generation, I ended up, often taking my kids into work, even breaking down some barriers and breastfeeding outside of meeting rooms, etc. We don't see that anymore. We see that more and more women either will do the same or will just quickly indicate that we need to do things differently, and we need to create the space so that women can continue to lead, but also on their own terms.
It sounds like you've got a lot of work to do with your with your network, and I wish you the very best of luck. I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming in.